Alright, so this has been talked about before, but I think there's a few things to add that I haven't really heard said, or I haven't heard it put in this way. So obviously nurses, doctors, medical professionals in the US have been fired or might be facing getting fired soon for not taking the vaccine. Now, a lot of people who think along the same lines as I do, or you do, have pointed out, well, you were okay with them not being vaccinated 6 months ago, but now they should be fired for not being vaccinated. I thought they were heroes to be celebrated. Now, of course, I think that's a perfectly fine point, but it's too easy for those who are in favor of vaccine mandates to just say, well, the vaccine wasn't available 6 to 7 months ago, so it wasn't an option, so it would have been incoherent and nonsensical at the time to demand vaccinations. And that's a fine response to that. And because I think that's a fair point, I think we need to go a little bit further and explain how hypocritical they are in terms of nurses being a net positive or a net negative. Because that's where the rub is, really. Before the vaccine was around, as we all know, nurses and doctors were being heralded as near savior-like figures. They could do no wrong. They deserved nothing but respect, admiration, and our eternal thanks. Now, to a large degree, I don't scoff at that. That's fair. There's a whole platoon of medical professionals out there who save more lives in a month than I will in my entire life. I do have respect for them for sure. I mean, there are still those goofy nurses that condemned some political rallies as being super spreader events, but then said the BLM marches with tens of thousands of jam-packed people were actually good for COVID. That's just cognitive dissonance defined right there. But overall, nurses and doctors are an integral and extremely important part of any society that wishes to be functional. That's true. And for over a year, people would constantly say this over and over and over. It would be absolute blasphemy, absolute heresy, and complete anathema to dare criticize nearly anyone in the medical field. They are absolutely indispensable. They risk their lives to save other lives. To say that they are a major net positive for society and in regards to COVID would still be a major understatement. Now, here enters the vaccine that a lot of nurses don't want to get. Maybe it's a good call for themselves, maybe it's a bad call for themselves. I don't know. But what I do know is that it's very telling of how politicized this all is when those very same people who could not praise those in the medical field enough now demean them, and after a year and a half of worshiping them, want them fired for being dangerous around their patients, so they say. So are they really dangerous? Well, this is where those people make absolutely no sense. Before the vaccine was available, as has been said, those nurses were considered completely indispensable. They were an astronomical net positive for society and for COVID patients. Without them, bodies would be lining the streets, we've been told. Then the vaccine comes along and all of a sudden they're a major net negative somehow, and they're extremely dangerous to their patients. So dangerous, in fact, they must be fired. These are the same people doing the same job with their same immune system, adding the same amount of value, saving the same amount of lives, which we've been told has been incalculable. So to boil all this down, when someone who once spoke as if nurses were saviors for a year and a half, and now that very same person is saying those unvaxxed nurses are simply a danger and need to be fired for not falling in line, just ask them, in what way did those nurses go from being a be-all, end-all net positive asset for society to being a danger? If they were not a danger before the vaccine was available, they certainly are no more dangerous now. They are just as much of a positive force as an unvaccinated nurse now as they were when they were an unvaccinated nurse 6 months ago. And given that those people are now also screaming about how hospitals are at capacity and don't have enough staff for the number of ICU beds they have, do they take responsibility for advocating for the termination of those majorly beneficial assets we had that they could not help but tell us all about for a year and a half? Now, I know that they won't take responsibility, but that doesn't change the fact that they are, in fact, responsible. But anyway, that's all for now. Like, subscribe, share this video. It's extremely appreciated, and take it easy.